You have likely seen the video on your phone late at night. The footage is usually shaky, filmed from the deck of a boat or through a GoPro lens held by a nervous diver. In the center of the frame is a creature in deep trouble, a humpback whale tangled in miles of heavy nylon netting, or perhaps a sea turtle with a plastic straw wedged in its nostril. A human hand enters the frame, reaching out with a knife or a pair of pliers. For a few tense minutes, the animal stays strangely still. Then, the final thread is cut. The animal is free. As it swims away, it performs a massive, spectacular breach, or turns back to look at the camera for one lingering second. We watch these clips and we feel an immediate, surging warmth. We hit the like button because we think we just witnessed a moment of profound interspecies connection. We assume the animal stayed still because it knew it was being saved. We interpret that final look as a thank you. But in the world of wild biology, intent is a luxury that most creatures cannot afford to guess at. For a wild animal, a rescue is often indistinguishable from a hunt, at least until the moment it's over. The uncomfortable question is, does the animal actually know you are the hero? Or are we just the only ones in the room who believe that story? To understand how high the stakes are for the animal, we have to look at the most famous rescue in modern history. In 2011, in the Sea of Cortez, a group of divers found a young female humpback whale they named Valentina. She was wrapped in hundreds of pounds of commercial fishing nets. The lines were so tight they were cutting into her skin, pinning her pectoral fins to her sides and dragging her down. For over an hour, the divers worked with small knives, cutting away the mesh inches at a time. Throughout the entire process, Valentina did something remarkable. She stayed calm. She didn't thrash. She didn't dive. She let the tiny, fragile humans swim inches from her eyes. When the last line fell away, Valentina didn't just swim off. For the next 20 minutes, she performed a series of incredible breaches, throwing her 40-ton body into the air again and again. The divers were in tears. To any human observer, it was a dance of joy. It was the ultimate thank you. But science has a harder time with that interpretation. When we see a thankful whale, we are using a mental tool called anthropomorphism. We are projecting our own social rituals onto a creature that has been evolving away from us for 50 million years. The stillness we call trust often has a much darker biological name: tonic immobility. This is an involuntary reflex, a last-ditch survival mechanism. When a wild animal is trapped or physically overwhelmed by a predator, its nervous system can essentially flatline. It isn't staying still because it's waiting for help. It's staying still because it has reached a state of physiological shock so profound that its muscles simply stop responding. It is playing dead because, in nature, predators are often triggered by movement. When researchers measure the heart rate and cortisol levels of rescued wildlife, from deer caught in fences to hawks trapped in netting, the data tells a story of absolute terror. Even when the animal looks calm, its internal chemistry is screaming. Its heart is beating at a rate that can lead to capture myopathy, a condition where the stress of being handled is so high that the animal's muscles literally begin to disintegrate, leading to death days after the successful rescue. To that deer or that hawk, the human isn't a savior. The human is a predator that found it while it was vulnerable and began touching it. An act that in the wild is almost always the prelude to being eaten. The reason for this disconnect is something psychologists call theory of mind. This is the ability to understand that another individual has their own private thoughts, goals, and intentions. Humans have this in spades. We can look at a stranger and know they are trying to help us, even if they are holding a knife. But for the vast majority of the animal kingdom, this concept doesn't exist. A shark doesn't think about what a diver is thinking. It reacts to the diver's size, speed, and electrical signature. In the mind of a wild animal, there are only two main categories for a large stranger: predator or prey. There is no category for philanthropist. However, if we look closer, there are cracks in this wall of misunderstanding. There are rare moments that suggest some animals might be capable of a translation we don't yet understand. In 2019, at Ningaloo Reef in Australia, a massive manta ray, nicknamed Freckles, approached a group of snorkelers. Freckles had several heavy fishing hooks lodged just below her eye. Instead of swimming away, she stayed with the divers, hovering motionless, and even turning her body to give them a better angle at the hooks. Manta rays have the largest brain-to-body ratio of any fish. They are one of the few non-mammals to pass the mirror test, suggesting they have some level of self-awareness. When Freckles waited for the divers to remove the hooks, she wasn't in tonic immobility. She was actively maintaining her position. She was asking. Some biologists suggest this might be an extension of cleaning symbiosis, a natural behavior where large fish allow smaller, cleaner fish to eat parasites off their skin. In that framework, the human isn't a hero, but a service provider. The ray isn't feeling gratitude. It's recognizing a functional, non-predatory interaction. It's a business deal, not a friendship. This brings us to a phenomenon known as the Bambi effect. We are far more likely to rescue and to see gratitude in animals that we find noble or beautiful. We see a thank you in the eyes of a dolphin or a whale because their faces are large and expressive in ways that remind us of ourselves. But we rarely talk about the gratitude of a rescued snapping turtle or a giant centipede. We find it easier to believe in interspecies connection when the other species looks like something we'd want to talk to. But there is one group of animals where the thank you might actually be real. In the world of primates, the evolutionary distance is much smaller, and the theory of mind is much stronger. There is a famous video of a chimpanzee named Wunda. She had been near death from a devastating illness and was nursed back to health at a sanctuary founded by Jane Goodall. On the day Wunda was released back into the wild, she was carried to a remote island in a crate. When the door opened, Wunda didn't just bolt for the trees. She stepped out, looked around, and then she did something that stopped the hearts of everyone watching. She turned back to Jane Goodall and wrapped her arms around her in a long, deliberate hug. This wasn't a reflex. It wasn't tonic immobility. It was a primate using a shared social language to acknowledge another individual. In that moment, the translation was perfect. The chimp knew who had saved her, and she wanted the savior to know she knew. But Wunda is the exception, not the rule. For the rest of the wild world, the whales, the hawks, the foxes, the gap remains. This leads us to a strange, uncomfortable realization about our own nature. Why do we care so much if they know? Why do we need the whale to breach or the fox to look back? Humans are a deeply social species. We are wired to seek validation for our actions. When we save a wild animal, we are performing one of the most uniquely human acts possible: altruism toward a creature that can never repay us. But our ego wants the loop closed. We want the thank you because it confirms that our goodness was seen. It turns a terrifying biological event into a Disney movie. But the truth might be more profound if we let go of the need for gratitude. True altruism is saving a life that will never know you saved it. It's being okay with the fact that the deer you cut out of the wire thinks you are a monster. It's accepting that to the whale, you were just a very small, very loud predator that somehow failed to finish the kill. There is a quiet dignity in that silence. It suggests that our responsibility to nature isn't based on a contract of mutual understanding. We don't save them because they are our friends. We save them because we are the only species on this planet that has the power to do so, and the only species that can understand the value of a life, even when that life is looking at us with nothing but fear. The next time you see one of those rescue videos, look past the splash and the joyful breach. Look at the moment of the release itself. There is a second of stillness before the animal vanishes, a moment where two entirely different worlds are touching. We don't need to call it thanks. We don't need to believe they know who we are. The miracle isn't that the animal recognized the human. The miracle is that the human recognized the animal and decided that its life was worth the risk of reaching out. Maybe the thank you was never for the animal to give. Maybe the thank you is something we give to ourselves for remembering, just for a second, that we aren't the only ones here. The wild doesn't owe us an acknowledgement. The lights may be on behind those eyes, but they are shining on a world we aren't invited to. And perhaps that is exactly how it should be. The animal doesn't need to know you're the hero. It only needs to know that the net is gone, the air is clear, and for the first time in a long time, it is free to swim away from you.